let's walk through this directory structure. So first up is the levels directory. That is, as you can see, it says VR mission template. This is it contains the level that you're creating. It contains the maps. The map it has a JSON file, but you never want to interact with this. As you will see, it's full of data. This is for tiled, so you can ignore that. In Visual Studio Code anyway, you load that up that's the file that you load up in tiled. So you just load this directly in tiled. And then in objectives, you have the example objectives that we saw in the game, the one from the chest and the one from the computer screen next to the laser terminal. And the objectives are, well, actually, let me start with the levels bit. So under levels, we have a couple of things to pay attention to. Levels.json being the first one. That's where I had set my title to VGTQ. And you've got, the usual metadata you'd expect there. So description, description displays when you're on that mission select screen in the Cthulhu themed holodeck room. That's where the description displays. Mission icon, Ryan. Mission icon is one thing in here which, Ryan, did you check that after the stream? Was there a conclusion? Yes, yeah. So we don't know if custom mission icon is a thing yet, but you can change the rest of it. That's totally, you can change events, you can change title and description, and then events is just to specify this, custom event JavaScript. Most of the meat of your mission will happen in objectives. That's where you set, I guess the learning path. So objectives are the quests, they are the things that people complete, they are the exercises, and each objective has two screens. It has a help screen and like an objective description screen, and then it has the little area, the little text entry area where they can put in their submissions or link to their files, etc. The objective.json is where you specify those text entry areas. So in that one I showed you in the TwilioQuest game earlier, I should really have that open on the right hand side so we can compare, but whatever. You can see we've got this field for validation fields, which contains an array of objects, and then you specify the fields in there. So each has a name which you plug into using the helper function later, and they have a label and a placeholder that sits inside the text. So it's really easy to set up fields for your objectives, and then all of the fun happens in the validator. Thank you, Visual Studio Code. All the fun happens in the validator, where you mainly are working with this helper, and so you see here it's grabbing those two fields, answer 1 and answer 2, and then one after the other it tests those fields for whether they match the expected answer and provides a failure. So this one's very simple. We're checking whether the answer exists or whether the answer is Twilio. There's a helper function in here just to check whether a string equals Twilio, which, this being JavaScript, should be published as its own NPM library immediately, and we'll have 6,000 downloads by the end of the week. And then the second one is, again, checking whether 2 + 2 does equal 4. And in both these cases, we have this little helper function. So we have helper.fail, which is where you specify an error message. And then you can do that for all the cases you want to test and fail at different places. And, doing different test cases one after the other allows you to provide continued guidance to your students. So if they enter, something completely wrong, or they enter nothing, you can remind them, you can give them a fail message that reminds them, like, hey, you didn't put anything in the text input, you need to put something in. If they then enter the incorrect answer, you give them a little bit more guidance, this kind of thing. And then with success, you tell them they did it and they move on to the next thing. So these can get really quite fun. There's some examples in the repository, and this is what I was saying about what work Copperbeardy has been doing. Sorry, I'm reading what Ryan is saying. Cool. What Copperbeardy has been doing, and what the validators in most of the language missions currently based are doing, is these validators execute code that users submit against like your local programming environment. So the JavaScript level or the Python level and the PHP level, you set an environment variable that goes to your interpreter executable essentially, and then the validator is running code that players submit against that interpreter and expecting certain outputs back. So you then also have so I spoke about there's two different text boxes within an objective, the help and the objective box, these are both specified in these markdown files. And a really important part of these is the aside, this little div at the top. This displays as a to-do list within the game. So you end up with like a nice little neat list of what you need to do to complete the objective. And as you know, otherwise it's relatively straightforward markdown. A really nice thing here. Ryan, how many different types of syntax highlighting is supported? You specify JS as the language here. Well, I'm guessing this is using I'm guessing this is using some just like library and it will work with like a bunch of expected ones, or is that just habit and this doesn't actually cool? Okay. So yeah. Okay, cool. I can't remember the common ones off the top of my head, but I expect to use one of those. So I mentioned there was a helper library for the Twilio thing. This is that example. So, you can just you can write helpers and throw them in here and export them as you would expect. What is this? Oh, this is a second example objective. What happens in the validator in this one? The same thing. Okay, cool.